The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with dazzling light. Tall glass windows showed stars shining outside, and banners from many worlds hung from the ceiling. Leaders, soldiers, merchants, and scholars from every part of the galaxy gathered here. Music drifted through the air, played by strange instruments that humans had never heard before. The event was meant to celebrate peace, but the noise of voices and laughter made the place feel more like a market than a council. At the far end of the hall, away from the crowd, stood Princess Lyri. She was the only daughter of the Serenal royal line, rulers of a proud but quiet world known for wisdom more than war. Her people were not aggressive, and their beauty was often compared to the soft light of the moon. Lyri had silver eyes that seemed to reflect starlight, and her long robe was woven with threads that shimmered like water. Yet none of these things mattered to the crowd around her. No one came near. She kept her head low, fingers curled together in front of her. Every few moments, she looked toward the gathering of leaders. They laughed, exchanged toasts, and argued loudly over politics. Lyri wished she had the same courage to step forward, but her nature was different. She was quiet, thoughtful, and shy. In a room full of people who spoke as if their voices alone could shape the galaxy, she felt invisible. Her advisors had told her to stand tall, to show the pride of her people, but she struggled. She had knowledge, she had wisdom, but she did not have the bold voice of the others. So she stayed in the corner, silent, a figure no one noticed. It might have stayed that way if not for one human. Daniel was an envoy from Earth, a planet new to the Council. Humanity had arrived among the stars only recently, yet they had already begun to make an impression. Their ships were not the strongest, and their technology was still catching up to the older civilizations, but humans carried something different. They carried a spirit that made them bold even in the face of the unknown. Daniel was young compared to the leaders in the room, and he was not born into power. He had grown up in an ordinary family on Earth, but he had been chosen because of his steady character and ability to listen. Unlike the others, Daniel was not busy making speeches or showing off wealth. Instead, his eyes wandered across the room, noticing details others missed. That was when he saw her. In the shadow of the tall crystal pillars, away from the noise, the shy princess stood as if she did not belong. She seemed so distant, yet her presence carried a quiet strength. Daniel felt something stir inside him. While the others pushed for attention, she withdrew, but there was something noble in her silence. He hesitated at first. The hall was filled with many powerful beings, and every step a human made was watched with suspicion. But the thought of leaving her alone felt wrong. She did not deserve to be ignored. His feet began to move before his mind had fully decided. Step by step, he walked past groups of leaders who whispered and stared. Some frowned, confused by where he was going. Others smirked, expecting him to stumble. Lyri noticed him. Her silver eyes lifted, uncertain. For a moment, her heart raced. No one had ever walked directly toward her in such a bold way. She wondered if he had mistaken her for someone else. She almost turned away, but his gaze stayed fixed on her, calm and sure. Daniel stopped in front of her. He did not bow with stiff formality, nor did he speak in the loud, booming voice used by the other leaders. Instead, he offered something simple. He reached out his hand. The room seemed to grow quiet. The music still played, voices still murmured, but for her, all sound faded. His hand was steady, warm, and open. It was not the hand of someone seeking power. It was the hand of someone offering friendship. Lyri froze. In her culture, touch carried deep meaning. She had been taught never to give her hand lightly. Yet something in Daniel's eyes told her this was different. He was not demanding. He was inviting. The choice was hers. Her heart trembled, but she lifted her hand. Slowly, gently, she placed it in his. A soft shimmer rose where their skin met, a faint glow that spread like ripples on water. It was a natural reaction of her people's energy when trust was formed. Many in the hall gasped. Whispers spread like fire through the crowd. The quiet princess, ignored by all, now stood at the center of attention, her hand in the hand of a human. Daniel only smiled, calm and unshaken. He did not care about the stares or the whispers. All he cared about was the comfort he saw slowly rising in her eyes. For the first time that evening, Leary felt seen. She let out a soft breath she had been holding since the start of the gathering. Her shoulders eased, and a small light appeared in her eyes. The weight of loneliness lifted, if only a little. She looked at the human who had chosen to notice her when no one else did, and a quiet thought formed in her mind. Perhaps she was not as invisible as she believed. The moment passed, but its mark remained. Leaders who once ignored her now whispered her name. Advisors who once doubted her now questioned her worth again. But Leary did not retreat into the shadows this time. She stayed where she was, hands still joined with Daniel's, standing a little taller than before. The great hall returned to noise, yet something had shifted. In the midst of stars and banners, amidst power and pride, a shy princess and a human envoy had started a story none could have predicted. And it all began with a single hand reaching out in kindness. The celebration inside the great hall continued, but for Princess Leary the world had changed. She stood beside Daniel, the human envoy, her hands still tingling with the memory of his touch. The simple act had carried more meaning than any speech made by the leaders that night. For the first time, someone had chosen to see her, not as a shadow or a silent ornament, but as a person. Daniel noticed the curious glances around them. Some of the leaders frowned, others whispered, and a few even laughed softly, as if the gesture was a foolish mistake. Yet he kept his calm expression. He did not let go of her hand too quickly, though he released it gently when he sensed her nervousness. "You looked like you needed someone to stand with you," Daniel said in a quiet voice meant only for her. Leary blinked. She was not used to such direct honesty. Most leaders spoke in riddles or polished phrases, words shaped to impress but empty of meaning. Daniel's words were plain, yet they struck her heart like truth. "I am not often approached," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then tonight is different," Daniel answered simply. The hall carried on around them. Servers moved between the groups carrying silver trays filled with glowing drinks and alien fruits. Musicians played strange but graceful notes on instruments shaped like spirals and crystals. But Leary no longer felt as though she was trapped on the edge. Daniel had shifted the ground beneath her. She found herself wanting to stay near him. Her advisors, standing at a distance, noticed as well. They exchanged uneasy looks. To them, humans were still untested, too new to be trusted fully. For their princess to give attention to a human envoy was unusual, perhaps even dangerous. But Leary did not look their way. For once, she let herself ignore their sharp eyes. "Would you like to step outside?" Daniel asked after a while. His tone was respectful, as if he understood her discomfort with the noisy hall. The gardens looked quieter. Leary hesitated. She had never left the main hall during such a grand gathering, but his suggestion filled her with relief. The constant noise weighed heavily on her mind, and the gardens outside were known to be filled with calm light from the twin moons. Slowly, she nodded. Together they walked out through the tall crystal doors, leaving behind the voices and music. The air outside was cooler, fresh with the scent of flowers brought from 100 worlds. Lanterns floated in the air, glowing softly like stars caught in glass. The sound of water running through small streams added peace to the night. Leary inhaled deeply, feeling her body relax. "It is easier to breathe here," she said softly. Daniel walked beside her along a stone path. He glanced at her, noticing how the light from the lanterns reflected in her silver eyes. "It suits you better than the hall," he said. She gave him a small, almost shy smile. It was rare for her to smile in public, but with him it felt natural. They stopped near a fountain shaped like a spiral galaxy. The water sparkled with tiny floating crystals that caught the moonlight. Leary sat on the edge of the fountain, folding her hands in her lap. Daniel stood nearby, respectful of her space. "Do you always stand alone at these gatherings?" he asked gently. Her gaze dropped. "Yes. My people value silence and thought. I was raised to listen more than to speak. But here, silence makes me invisible." Daniel nodded. He had noticed how loudly the others spoke, how each leader seemed to fight for the center of attention. "Sometimes silence is stronger than noise," he said. "It lets you hear things others miss." She looked up at him, surprised by the way he spoke. Most saw her quietness as weakness. But Daniel saw it as strength. "Do humans believe that?" she asked. "Some of us do," he replied. "On Earth, there are many kinds of people. Some shout, some stay quiet, but all carry their own kind of strength. I think you carry yours well." The princess felt her heart warm at his words. No one in the council had ever spoken to her like this. They praised her beauty sometimes, or her royal title, but never her silence, never her true nature. Daniel's simple respect touched her more deeply than she expected. They sat there for a while, speaking in gentle tones. She told him about her home world, a planet covered in silver seas and tall crystal forests. He told her about Earth, about oceans filled with waves and skies filled with birds. Leary listened closely, her eyes wide with wonder, for she had never heard such vivid stories of a young world finding its place among the stars. As they spoke, a quiet connection grew between them. It was not forced. It was not rushed. It was like two rivers slowly joining into one. But peace never lasted long in the galaxy. A distant sound reached them from the hall. At first it was faint, but soon it grew louder. Raised voices, angry and sharp, echoed through the crystal doors. Leary's body tensed. She recognized the tone of leaders in conflict. Daniel turned his head. "Something is wrong." They both rose quickly and moved back toward the entrance. When they stepped inside, the atmosphere had changed. The music had stopped. Leaders stood in clusters, arguing fiercely. Some shouted, others waved their hands in anger. Holographic screens flickered above them, showing the message that had interrupted the gathering. It was a warning. A rival faction, known for aggression and ambition, had sent a threat to the council. Their fleet moved near the outer rim, and they claimed the council's unity was a lie. Fear spread through the hall. Leaders argued over what should be done. Some called for war. Others demanded retreat. The once festive celebration now felt like a storm ready to break. Leary's eyes widened. She knew something about this faction. Her people had studied their history for generations. She wanted to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. She had been silent so long that the idea of raising her voice before all these powerful beings made her shake. Daniel noticed her hesitation. He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "You know something, don't you?" She nodded faintly. "Then speak," he said, his eyes steady on hers. "Your voice matters. Let them hear it." Her hands trembled, but she felt the memory of his hand holding hers earlier. The warmth, the strength, the simple act of trust. It gave her courage. She took a deep breath. For the first time, Princess Leary prepared to step into the storm of voices, not as a shadow, but as someone who deserved to be heard. And Daniel was ready to stand with her. The hall was no longer a place of music and light. The grand celebration had turned into a storm of voices. Leaders of many worlds shouted across the chamber, each one trying to make their voice rise above the rest. The rival factions' threat hung in the air like a shadow, and fear sharpened every word. Some demanded to send fleets at once. Others called for stronger defenses around their own planets. A few shouted that the council had failed and that peace was a dream that would soon break. No one listened to anyone else. The sound became a wave of chaos, crashing again and again. Princess Leary stood near the edge of the gathering, her silver eyes wide. She wanted to speak. She carried knowledge that could calm the storm, knowledge her people had gathered through long years of study. Yet the fear of being ignored or mocked weighed on her chest like a heavy stone. Her hands shook. Her voice, when she thought of using it, felt small compared to the booming words of the other leaders. She took a step back, her body urging her to return to the corner where she had always hidden. But then she felt it. A steady presence at her side. Daniel. The human envoy had not moved away from her since the moment they returned to the hall. He stood near, his eyes not on the shouting leaders but on her. His calm gaze seemed to cut through the noise. "You know something important," he said in a low voice that only she could hear. Leary nodded, her throat tight. "Yes. My people have studied their history. We know how they think, how they act when they make threats. If I spoke, I could explain it. But they will not listen. They never do." Daniel leaned closer, his voice steady and sure. "They will listen if you believe in your words. And if they do not, I will stand with you until they do." His promise struck deep in her heart. No one had ever told her that before. She had always been told to remain quiet, to stay out of the way, to let others speak for her. But Daniel did not see her as weak. He saw her as someone with a voice worth hearing. She looked at him, searching for any doubt in his eyes, but found none. He meant what he said. Slowly, she drew a deep breath. Her chest still trembled, but her spirit began to rise. The memory of his hand in hers returned to her mind. That moment of trust had sparked something inside her. Now it was time to let it grow. Leary stepped forward. At first, no one noticed. The storm of voices still roared. But Daniel moved with her. He did not push ahead or try to silence others. Instead, he placed a hand on her arm for a moment and whispered, "Take your step. Do not rush. They will see you." She walked toward the center of the hall, her long robe brushing softly against the polished floor. The light of the great crystal lamps above shone down on her, making the silver in her eyes glow. Slowly, the leaders began to notice. One by one, the shouting paused, and heads turned. Whispers rippled across the chamber. The shy princess was walking into the center. Leary stopped where all could see her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she lifted her chin. She pressed her hands together to steady them, then let them fall to her sides. For a moment, silence stretched across the hall, waiting to see if she would speak. Then she opened her mouth. "My people know the rival faction well," she said, her voice soft but clear. "We have studied them for many years. When they send threats, they do not always mean immediate war. They mean to test our fear. They wish to see us fight among ourselves, to grow weak before they even strike." Her words carried through the chamber. Some leaders frowned, others looked curious. She continued. "If we answer with anger, they will gain what they want. If we show fear, they will press harder. But if we show unity, if we refuse to break apart, their threat loses its power. They respect strength, but not just the strength of ships or weapons. They respect the strength of voices joined together." She paused, her breath steady now. "I do not say we should ignore the danger. We must prepare. But we must not fall into their game. If we stand together, if we plan as one, we can stop them without war." The hall remained quiet for a moment after she finished. The silence was different this time. It was not the silence of ignoring her. It was the silence of listening. Then, as expected, a few leaders scoffed. One tall figure with armor shining like fire spoke sharply. "What does a silent princess know of war? Words do not stop fleets." Murmurs of agreement followed, but Daniel stepped forward before the doubt could grow. "She speaks truth," Daniel said firmly. His human voice, though not loud, carried a sharp clarity. "Humans may be new to this council, but we have faced threats on our own world. We know that division is the greatest weapon of an enemy." She is right. If we turn against each other, the rival faction has already won. Leary looked at him with quiet gratitude. He had not taken her place, but he had strengthened her words. Together, they stood side by side, and the crowd saw it. The room began to stir again, but the tone had shifted. Some leaders now debated her idea seriously. Others asked questions instead of shouting. Even those who doubted her grew less certain in their anger. For the first time, Princess Leary's voice had entered the storm and changed its course. As the discussion continued, she stepped back slightly, her breath finally easing. Daniel leaned toward her. "You did it," he said softly. Her lips curved into a small, shy smile. "I was afraid." "Courage is not the absence of fear," Daniel replied. "It is standing even when fear is there." His words warmed her. She realized that what she had just done was more than speak in a council. It was the first step into a path she had never walked before. A path where she could be more than the silent princess in the corner. The bond of trust between her and the human envoy had already begun to change her life. And though she did not yet know it, that bond would soon change the fate of the galaxy as well. The council chamber had quieted after Princess Leary spoke. For the first time, many leaders considered her words. The storm of shouting had softened into calmer debate. Some still resisted, but the spark of unity had been lit. Daniel stood close beside her, steady as a shield. But peace in the hall did not mean peace in the stars. Hours later, as the celebration ended and the council members prepared to leave, alarms suddenly rang through the station. The clear musical notes of the hall were replaced with sharp warning tones. Red light pulsed along the walls, and the ground seemed to tremble beneath their feet. A voice from the station guards filled the air. "Unidentified ships detected at the edge of the system. Their signal matches the rival faction." Gasps spread among the gathered leaders. Fear returned quickly. Some cried out for retreat, demanding to be escorted to their ships. Others shouted orders for fleets to be gathered at once. The fragile calm that Leary had built began to crack. Daniel looked at her. This is their game. You said they would test us with fear. Now it begins. Leary's heart pounded. She had hoped her words would buy them time, but the rival faction was moving faster than she expected. Still, she could not let her people's wisdom be wasted. She had to show strength. She stepped forward, raising her voice above the noise. Do not panic. This is only their shadow, not yet their strike. They will watch how we respond. If we show fear, they will attack. If we show strength, they may hold back. Her voice carried across the chamber, steady though her hands trembled at her sides. Some leaders turned toward her, others still argued, but at least the sound of pure panic lessened. One of the older council members, a tall alien with skin like stone, looked at her with sharp eyes. You say they test us. Then what should we do now, princess? Should we stand still while fleets gather at our doors? Leary hesitated, unsure how to answer with every eye fixed on her. But Daniel spoke gently at her side, giving her strength. Tell them what you know. You see their pattern better than anyone here. Taking courage, she said, we must prepare defenses, yes, but without showing weakness. Send fleets to form a shield around this station. Make no strike yet, but let them see our unity. If we move together, they will think twice. The stone-skinned elder studied her for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Perhaps the princess is wiser than we believed. It was not full agreement, but it was a start. The council sent orders across the station. Ships from many worlds lifted from their docks and moved into formation, forming a ring of protection around the station. Human ships, though smaller and fewer, joined the line with determination. The rival faction's fleet, distant on the edge of the system, made no immediate move. They waited, watching. Inside the chamber, tension remained. Leaders paced, whispering in worried tones. Advisors rushed to bring reports. Every new signal from the scanners made hearts beat faster. Leary stayed near the center, her silver eyes fixed on the star map above. She could see the rival ships as red lights on the edge of the display. They looked like claws reaching out, ready to strike. Yet they had not moved closer. Her people's wisdom told her this was true to their nature. They would not risk attack unless they believed the council was weak. Daniel stood beside her, his arms folded. He could feel the weight on her shoulders. She was still shy, still unused to carrying such attention, but she did not retreat. She faced the moment with quiet bravery. You are holding them back already, he said softly. Leary turned her head slightly toward him. Do you believe so? Yes, he said with calm certainty. Look at them. They wait. That means your voice has already made a difference. His words gave her a spark of strength. She realized she was no longer invisible, no longer the silent shadow in the corner. She was standing at the heart of the storm. The hours passed slowly. Each moment of waiting felt heavy. Then, near midnight by station time, the scanners showed movement. The rival fleet shifted formation. The red lights stretched wider, circling the system like predators surrounding prey. Gasps rose again in the chamber. They moved to attack, cried one leader. Leary studied the pattern carefully. Her heart raced, but she forced her mind to remain clear. No. Not yet. This is still their test. They want to see if our line will break under pressure. If even one fleet retreats, they will strike. The leaders looked at one another, fear battling with reason. Some still wanted to withdraw to protect their own worlds. Leary's voice rose, stronger than before. If you retreat, you doom us all. Stay in formation. Show them that we are one. Her words rang with unusual force, and Daniel's firm nod gave them weight. The human envoy spoke loudly, human ships will hold their line. If we can stand, so can the rest of you. Slowly, one by one, the leaders gave their orders. Fleets stayed in position, engines burning steady light in the darkness of space. The rival faction circled, watching, waiting, but found no weakness. At last, after long hours, the red lights on the scanner began to fade. The rival fleet pulled back, retreating into the far edge of the stars. They had not attacked. They had tested, and for now, they had withdrawn. Relief spread through the chamber like a wave. Leaders exhaled, some even cheering softly. But the relief was mixed with unease. The shadow had risen, and though it had faded, it had not vanished. Princess Leary lowered her gaze, her body heavy with exhaustion. Yet her heart held a spark of pride. She had spoken when it mattered. She had stood when fear tried to silence her. And she had been heard. Daniel looked at her with quiet respect. You kept them together. Without you, the council might have broken apart tonight. She met his eyes, her voice soft. I did not do it alone. You gave me the strength to stand. The bond between them deepened, not of titles or duty, but of trust and shared courage. The rising shadow had been turned back for now, but both knew the true test was still to come. The morning after the rival fleet pulled back, the Galactic Council gathered once more. The great chamber, with its tall crystal pillars and star-filled windows, carried a heavy silence. No music played this time, no laughter or cheerful speeches. The events of the night before still weighed on everyone. The rival faction had shown its strength. It had tested them and nearly broken their unity. Now the leaders understood that the galaxy was standing on the edge of war. One by one, the council members began to speak. Some argued that fleets must be doubled. Others called for immediate attacks before the rival faction returned stronger. Fear shaped every suggestion, and the voices grew sharper with each passing moment. Leary sat at her place, her silver eyes lowered. She listened as she always had, but her thoughts were different now. For the first time, she was not content to remain silent. She remembered the way Daniel had looked at her when she spoke the night before, steady and sure. She remembered the way the fleets had held their line because she found the courage to speak. That memory gave her strength. Daniel leaned slightly toward her. His voice was calm but firm. They need to hear you again. You saw the truth when others could not. Do not let them lose it now. Her heart raced. Even after what she had done, fear still whispered in her ear. What if she was wrong? What if her words failed? But then she remembered the shimmer of energy when she took Daniel's hand for the first time. She remembered that she was not alone anymore. Slowly, she rose to her feet. The noise in the chamber did not stop at once. Leaders continued to argue, their voices echoing against the high ceiling. But Daniel rose with her. His quiet presence made others turn their heads, and soon the chamber grew still. All eyes turned toward the princess who had once been invisible. Leary took a deep breath. Her voice trembled for the first word but grew stronger as she continued. You saw what happened last night, she began. The rival faction tested us. They tried to break our unity, but we stood together, and they pulled back. That was not luck. That was proof that strength lies not only in weapons, but in our will to stand as one. Some leaders shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward, listening. If we fight among ourselves, she continued, they will strike with ease. If we answer their threats with fear, they will grow bolder. But if we join as one, if we plan as one, we can end their threat without falling into endless war. They are strong, yes, but their strength is not greater than the strength of unity. She lifted her chin, her silver eyes shining under the lights. We must form a single defense plan. Not scattered fleets, not separate commands, but a shield woven together. Every world must stand side by side. If we do this, they cannot break us. If we do this, we will show them that the galaxy is not weak. Her words rang through the chamber. The silence that followed was deep. Then came the doubts. A leader with skin like polished steel rose to his feet. His voice was sharp. Pretty words. But unity is a dream. Each world has its own fleet, its own command. Who will lead such a shield? You, princess. You have never commanded a battle. Murmurs of agreement filled the air. Old habits of mistrust returned quickly. Leary's courage began to waver. But Daniel stepped forward before the doubt could spread too far. His human voice carried across the chamber, steady and unshaken. She is not asking to take power. She is asking us to think beyond our borders. If humans can understand this, then why can't you, who have ruled the stars for centuries? Do you not see? The rival faction feeds on your division. She is right. Unity is not a dream. It is survival. His words struck the chamber with unexpected force. Humanity was new, yet here stood a human envoy defending the wisdom of a princess most had ignored. The contrast was sharp. It made many leaders pause. Leary's heart lifted again. She took another step forward, her voice clear and strong now. I do not seek to lead alone. I seek to be part of a council that acts with one voice. Let us form a defense council, made of trusted leaders from each world. Let us share command and share strength. Together we will build a shield no rival can break. The stone-skinned elder who had once doubted her rose slowly. His deep voice rumbled across the hall. Last night I saw fear nearly break us. But I also saw the fleets hold because of her words. Perhaps unity is not only a dream. Perhaps it is the only way. A murmur of agreement spread this time, not of doubt but of thought. The leaders began to discuss seriously, not shouting but weighing the idea with care. Daniel watched Leary closely, pride shining in his eyes. She had stepped into the storm again, and this time her voice had carried even further. She had spoken not as a shadow but as a leader. As the debates continued, the chamber grew less divided. Plans began to form. Proposals for shared command, for linked communication between fleets, for united training. The rival faction had meant to divide them, but instead their threat was pushing the council towards something new. When the session ended hours later, the leaders had not yet agreed fully, but the first steps toward unity had been made. And at the heart of those steps was the shy princess who once stood unseen. As the chamber emptied, Daniel walked beside her toward the quiet corridors. You were strong today, he said softly. Leary let out a breath she had been holding. I was afraid again. Everyone is afraid, Daniel replied. But you spoke anyway. That is what makes the difference. She gave him a small smile, her eyes warm. If I had been alone, I would not have done it. Your voice gave mine strength. He shook his head gently. No. You already had the strength. I only reminded you of it. They stepped into the quiet of the council gardens, the same place where they had first spoken together. The lanterns floated softly above the paths, and the night air carried the scent of flowers from distant worlds. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply walked side by side, their steps calm after the storm of the chamber. Leary felt the bond between them growing deeper with every moment. She had been invisible once. Now her voice was heard across the council. And she knew that this was only the beginning. The rival faction would not give up. The true test of unity still waited. But for the first time in her life, she believed she could face it. Not alone. With trust. With courage. With a human who had seen her when no one else did. The calm after the council meeting lasted only a few days. Scouts from the rival faction reported that their fleet had regrouped near the edge of the system. The threat was no longer a test. It was real. Ships moved swiftly, engines blazing like burning comets, and sensors detected hundreds of vessels approaching at once. The leaders of the council gathered again, their voices anxious. Fear had returned, stronger than before. Some suggested splitting the fleets to protect their own worlds. Others demanded immediate strikes to scare the rival faction. The tension was thick, and the room was filled with doubt. Princess Leary stood quietly, her silver eyes focused on the star map projected above the center table. Daniel was beside her, calm and ready. Together, they studied the patterns of the approaching fleet. Leary's mind worked quickly. Her people's knowledge of the rival faction told her how they would act. They were bold but reckless when they believed others were disorganized. If the council faltered, even for a moment, the rival faction would strike with full force. We cannot scatter our fleets, Leary said softly but firmly. If we divide, they will attack the weakest link first. We must hold our line and move as one. Unity is our shield. Daniel nodded. Then we need a plan that every world can follow without confusion. She looked up at him, grateful for his presence. I will give the orders for coordination. But you must help guide the human ships. They are fewer than the others, but they are agile and strong. We can use that to protect the center of our line. Together, they moved to the command deck. Holographic screens filled the room, showing the positions of every ship in the system. Leaders and commanders crowded around, some still doubtful, some clearly afraid. Leary's heart raced. This was more than a council meeting. This was the moment when words would meet reality, and every decision mattered. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder briefly. You are ready, he said. His calm presence gave her courage. Leary took a deep breath. All fleets will form a circular formation around the council station. Human ships will cover the gaps and provide support where needed. Communication will be shared across all commands. No fleet moves without the orders from the center. Everyone must act as one. Her voice was steady now. The leaders listened. Some muttered doubt, but others nodded. Slowly, the plan began to take shape. Messages were sent to all worlds. Ships lifted from docks, engines burning brightly, joining the line in formation. The rival fleet approached, bright red lights filling the scanners, yet the council's fleet stayed strong. The first clash came at the edge of the system. The rival faction launched small attack pods, fast and aggressive. They hoped to break the line by surprise. Human ships, led by Daniel, intercepted them. They moved quickly, using speed and coordination to protect the larger vessels. Leary's heart pounded as she watched. Every movement had to be perfect. One mistake, one miscommunication, and the rival faction could exploit it. She gave clear commands, her voice calm, her hands moving across the controls with precision. Her earlier fear had melted into focus. The battle intensified. Red lights from the rival fleet blazed across the dark void of space. Explosions erupted near the outer fleets, shaking the projections in the command deck. Some leaders panicked, but Leary's words cut through the chaos. Hold your positions. Do not break the line. Trust the plan. Daniel's human ship started between gaps, shielding weaker vessels. His presence at the forefront inspired others. They followed his movements, coordinating with Leary's orders. Together, they formed a shield that the rival faction could not penetrate. Hours passed. The rival fleet tested every weak point, firing missiles, sending boarding pods, and attempting to draw ships away. Leary remained at the center, issuing orders, adjusting formations, and watching every movement. Her silver eyes glowed with quiet determination. At one point, a large rival cruiser broke formation and targeted the human ships directly. Daniel moved immediately, directing smaller vessels to intercept. Leary's voice rose, firm and commanding. Cover the human ships. They hold the line. Explosions lit the projections, but the coordinated defense worked. The human ships survived, and the rival cruiser was forced to retreat. Leary realized then that unity was not only a plan. It was action, trust, and courage combined. By nightfall, the rival fleet had been pushed back. They had tested the Council, but they had not broken it. The Council station remained safe, the fleets intact, and the leaders standing together. The victory was small, but it was real. The chamber of the Council later filled with relief and quiet conversation. Leaders looked at Leary differently now. She was no longer the shy princess in the corner. She had guided them through the battle with her knowledge, courage, and clear thinking. Daniel approached her. You did it. You held them together. She shook her head slightly, exhausted but smiling. We did it. I gave the orders, but everyone followed. Without their trust, it would have failed. Daniel smiled back. And they trusted you because you trusted yourself. That is what makes you a true leader. Leary looked at the stars outside the window, her mind still racing from the battle. She had faced fear, chaos, and doubt. She had spoken when it mattered most, and now she had learned something she had never known before. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was taking action in spite of it. The bond between her and Daniel had grown stronger. They had worked together, side by side, human and princess, to protect not just the Council, but the hope of the galaxy. As the night settled over the station, Leary felt something she had never felt before, the knowledge that she could be seen, she could be heard, and she could make a difference. The rival faction had tested them, and for now, the Council had passed the test. But Leary knew that the real challenge was still ahead. Together with Daniel, she would stand ready. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy sent next. And for the first time in her life, she believed that she was truly not alone. The Council chamber had returned to its quiet state after the rival fleet's retreat. The leaders were no longer arguing, but instead engaged in serious discussion about how to prepare for the future. Fleets would remain on alert, defenses strengthened, and communication lines between worlds made clearer. The galaxy had been reminded that danger could arrive at any moment. Among the leaders, one figure stood apart, yet no longer in shadow. Princess Leary's silver eyes scanned the room, calm and confident. She had come a long way from the shy princess who had once stood in a corner unnoticed. Now, her words and actions had guided the council through its first real test, earning the respect of leaders who had doubted her. Daniel stood beside her, quietly observing. He had played his part, guiding the human ships with skill and courage, but he knew the true strength came from Lyri. Her quiet wisdom, combined with her growing confidence, had held the council together when fear had threatened to destroy it. As the leaders spoke, Lyri approached the central platform. She felt the weight of attention on her, but it no longer frightened her. The trust she had built with Daniel had become a shield for her own courage. She lifted her voice, clear and calm, addressing the council. Fleets must remain prepared, and our defenses strong, she began. But we have learned something greater than strategy or ships. We have learned that unity is our true strength. We are stronger together than apart. This knowledge is more powerful than any weapon in the galaxy. Heads nodded around the room. Even those who had doubted her before now saw the truth in her words. The elders, the generals, the leaders of the largest worlds, all listened with attention and respect. Daniel watched with pride as Lyri spoke. He could see the transformation in her. The shy girl who once hesitated to speak now stood as a leader among the greatest in the galaxy. Her voice had reached them all, and they had responded. A senior council member, the one with skin like polished stone, rose and spoke. Princess Lyri has proven herself. Not only in words, but in action. Her guidance has kept us together, and her courage has inspired trust. We see now that wisdom is not always loud, but it is always powerful. Applause echoed through the chamber. Lyri felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she realized that she was truly seen. Her people, her knowledge, and her quiet strength were no longer overlooked. Daniel stepped closer, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. Lyri smiled, her silver eyes shining. "We did it," she corrected. "I could not have faced it alone. You helped me see that my voice mattered. That we can make a difference together." Leaders approached her, offering words of respect and congratulations. Some admitted that they had underestimated her, and many asked for her guidance in the future. Lyri accepted with humility, but also with the quiet confidence that came from knowing she had earned her place. Later, when the council session ended, she and Daniel walked through the gardens outside the chamber. The soft glow of lanterns illuminated their path, and the twin moons reflected on the streams and crystal flowers. The world felt peaceful, even after the trials of the past days. "You have changed everything," Daniel said. "Not just for the council, but for the galaxy. They will remember you." Lyri looked at him, her heart full. "I was invisible once," she admitted. "But you saw me when no one else did. That gave me courage. That made all of this possible." Daniel shook his head gently. "No. You had it inside you all along. I only reminded you of it. You were always capable. You just needed someone to believe in you first." They walked in silence for a while, the soft sound of water from the fountains filling the air. Lyri realized that courage was not something she needed to find alone. It grew in moments of trust, in the support of those who believed in her, and in the willingness to stand even when others doubted. In the days that followed, the council implemented Lyri's plans. Fleets moved in perfect coordination, communication lines connected worlds, and training exercises strengthened the bonds between leaders. The rival faction, seeing the council's unity, began to reconsider any future attacks. The galaxy had witnessed the power of a single voice, supported by trust and courage, shaping the fate of many worlds. Lyri's reputation grew. She was no longer the shy princess ignored in the corner. She became a symbol of wisdom, courage, and quiet strength. Young diplomats and envoys looked up to her. Other leaders sought her guidance. She had stepped from the shadows into a place where her voice could shine. And yet, in all the recognition, she never forgot the hand that had first reached out to her. Daniel remained at her side, not as a shadow, but as a partner in thought and courage. Together, they had faced fear, guided fleets, and shown the galaxy that even the quietest voice could change the course of events. One evening, as the council hall quieted for the night, Lyri and Daniel stood on a balcony overlooking the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of possibility and danger, yet also full of hope. "You think the rival faction will return?" she asked softly. "Perhaps," Daniel replied. "But now we are ready. And we will face whatever comes together." She nodded, feeling the truth of his words. "I am no longer invisible. I will speak, I will act, and I will protect our galaxy." Daniel smiled, and for the first time, Lyri realized that courage was not about standing alone. It was about taking the first step, trusting others, and letting your voice be heard when it mattered most. The shy princess had been noticed. The hand that reached for hers had changed her world. And now, the galaxy would remember her not as someone quiet or hidden, but as a leader whose courage and wisdom had guided them all. As they stood together, watching the stars, Lyri felt something new. She felt seen, heard, and ready. The future was uncertain, but she knew one thing for certain: one act of kindness, one human hand reaching out, could change everything. And it had.